Have you ever felt the weight of a silence, so profound it seems to contain all the echoes of history? Have you ever stood within a landscape so vast and so ancient that your own existence feels like a fleeting whisper against the enduring stone and sand? The great deserts of our world are such places, theaters of sun and shadow, where empires rise like shimmering heat hazes and crumble into dust with the passing of a single, patient millennium. In these shadowed sands and beneath the unrelenting gaze of a golden sun, the line between history and myth dissolves. Here, curses are not mere words, but are woven into the very fabric of the air, and the treasures of forgotten kings are guarded by more than just time. These legends, which we shall explore together, are not simple stories. They are a form of ancestral memory, a chthonic knowledge etched into the geology of a place. They are the psychic residue of immense ambition, profound sorrow, and cosmic justice, left to bake and harden under the sun until they became as real as the scorpions that scuttle in the shade of a fallen colossus. To listen to these tales is to hear the desert itself speaking, a voice dry as bone, whispering of the terrible price of immortality and the eternal vigilance of the dead. I am your guide on this excursion into the sepulchral heart of forgotten lore. It is my purpose to navigate us through these treacherous narratives, to illuminate the shadows without dispelling the essential, terrifying darkness that gives them their power and their truth. Consider this, then, not a passive viewing, but an active journey. We are about to plunge into a shadow-shrouded realm where the past is never truly past, and where the thirst for gold and glory often leads to an eternity of damnation. It is a venture into the collective unconscious of humanity, as reflected in the unforgiving mirror of the desert. Tonight, we shall unearth 5 such legends from these sun-scorched annals. We will confront a guardian born of greed, a spirit woven from sorrow, spectral scribes who chronicle sin, a plague of gilded hubris, and a phantom oasis that promises salvation while delivering only despair. Be warned, these are not tales spun for the comfort of a child's bedtime. They are collective nightmares that reveal immutable truths about our own nature. They are the cautionary echoes of those who dared to challenge the desert and lost. If you, like me, feel an inexorable pull toward the shadowed corners of history and the disquieting truths that lurk within our oldest stories, then you have found a sanctuary here. I invite you to join our community of intellectual pilgrims. Subscribe to our channel. Activate the notifications so that you're never left behind when we embark on these journeys into the twilight of human understanding. As we proceed, I ask you to consider a question. Which desert from your own cultural imagination holds the most potent and haunting legends? What do its whispers say about the people who once walked its dunes? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Your insights enrich our shared exploration. And now, with the academic preliminaries observed and our pact with the shadows made, let our journey into the golden curses and shadowed deserts begin. First, we travel to the lost heart of the Nabatean expanse, to a place erased from maps and memory, known in fragmented Ostraca only as Ibisal. Here, we encounter the legend of the Amalith, the Dune-made guardian. This is a tale of the desert's formidable power to create, not with the gentle touch of water and life, but with the abrasive, inexorable pressure of sand and time. The Amalith is not a ghost, nor is it a demon summoned from some infernal realm. It is, rather, a terrestrial antibody, a defense mechanism of the earth itself, manifested to protect its deep treasures from the grasping hands of mortal avarice. Its motivation is singular and terrifyingly simple: to reclaim that which was stolen and to incorporate the thief into the very substance of its being. The Amalith is a creature of terrifying beauty, a chilling testament to the desert's geologic artistry. It possesses no fixed form, but is most often described in the fevered writings of doomed treasure hunters as a vaguely humanoid shape sculpted from living sandstone. Its surface shifts and ripples, grains of sand cascading down its limbs like dry water, revealing layers of sedimentary rock, veins of quartz, and, most disturbingly, the contorted shapes of past victims embedded within its torso, faces frozen in silent screams, hands reaching out from a prison of stone. It has no eyes, only hollows from which a faint, amber light emanates, the glow of the very sand gold it is sworn to protect. Its voice is the grating sound of stone grinding against stone, a sound that can shatter a man's sanity long before its crushing grip shatters his bones. The creature's supernatural abilities are intrinsically linked to its elemental nature. It can dissolve into a swirling sandstorm at will, traversing the desert with the speed of a habub, only to coalesce in an instant before its quarry. It possesses immense physical strength, capable of pulverizing rock and steel. Its most feared power, however, is the curse of petrification. Those who touch the sand gold of Ibisal, a unique, shimmering particulate found only in the city's treasury, become attuned to the amulet. A single touch from the guardian begins a horrifying transformation, a slow petrification that starts at the extremities and creeps inward, turning flesh and bone to sandstone over the course of several agonizing hours, all while the victim remains conscious, a prisoner within their own hardening form. The genesis of the amulet is tied to the fall of Ibisal itself. The city-state was said to have discovered a way to transmute common desert sand into a lustrous, golden powder, a process that blasphemously mimicked the power of the sun god. This sand gold brought them unparalleled wealth, but also bred a deep-seated paranoia and greed that rotted their society from within. The last king, a tyrant named Ozymandias, so feared the theft of his treasure that he made a pact with the chthonic spirits of the earth. In a dark ritual, he sacrificed his entire treasury guard, burying them alive beneath the golden dunes of his vault. Their collective agony and the king's obsessive will, combined with the unnatural energy of the sand gold, did not create a legion of ghostly protectors. Instead, it coalesced into a single, monstrous entity, the amulet, a guardian whose loyalty was not to the king, but to the treasure itself. In the late 19th century, a British antiquarian and disgraced officer named Major Alastair Finch became obsessed with finding the lost city. He was a man defined by a singular, gnawing hubris, believing his intellect and resolve could conquer any challenge, natural or supernatural. After years of research, he procured a tattered map from a dying Bedouin, a map that showed the way to Ibisal. He assembled a small, ill-fated expedition and journeyed into the Rub al-Khali. After weeks of hardship, they stumbled upon the ruins, half buried by the dunes. They found the great treasury, its entrance sealed not by a door, but by a curtain of eternally shifting sand. Inside, they discovered a chamber filled with dunes of shimmering, golden powder. Finch, in his moment of triumph, plunged his hands into the sand gold, laughing as it slipped through his fingers. That night, as his men celebrated, a sudden, unnatural sandstorm engulfed the camp. From its heart, a monolithic figure of grinding stone and whispering sand emerged. The amulet had come to collect. Finch's men were dispatched with brutal efficiency, their bodies broken and crushed. Finch himself was subjected to a more terrible fate. The creature merely touched him, a single, grating brush of its sandy finger against his cheek. Finch fled into the desert, but the curse had taken root. His journals, found years later by a geological survey team, document his last horrifying days. He wrote of his fingers turning to sandstone, of the stiffness creeping up his arms, of watching, helpless, as his own body became his tomb. His final entry was a barely legible scrawl. The sand. It sings inside me. I'm becoming the desert. I am. The journal was found beside a strangely shaped rock, vaguely resembling a man on his knees, his face turned towards the sky in a silent, eternal scream. The amulet is a potent metaphor for the desert's absolute sovereignty. It represents nature's violent, impersonal response to human exploitation. In this narrative, the earth is not a passive resource to be plundered, but an active, vengeful entity. The sand gold, is the catalyst, a symbol of unnatural wealth derived from corruption of the natural order. Major Finch's fate is a classic cautionary tale of colonial and intellectual arrogance. He did not fail because he was weak, but because he was arrogant enough to believe the desert's secrets could be possessed. The Amalith's method of punishment, petrification, is deeply symbolic. It is not merely death, it is assimilation. The thief is not just killed. They are unmade, their biological essence overwritten by the geological. They become part of the landscape they sought to conquer, a permanent monument to their own folly. This legend speaks a profound ecological and psychological truth, that which you seek to greedily possess will ultimately possess you. In the modern era, the tale of the Amalith persists, though it has shape-shifted to fit contemporary anxieties. It is no longer just treasure hunters who are warned. Geologists, oil prospectors, and even tourists are told whispers of the Stone Guardian. Local guides in the wadis of Jordan and Saudi Arabia will sometimes point to unusually shaped rock formations and tell stories of greedy men who took something that was not theirs. The legend has become a powerful environmental fable, a warning against resource exploitation and the belief that humanity can extract wealth from the earth without consequence. The Amalith remains a potent symbol of the desert's enduring power, a reminder that some treasures are meant to remain buried, and some places are meant to remain inviolate, guarded by a timeless, grinding wrath. Thus, the Amalith of Ibisal stands as a chilling sentinel at the threshold of our journey, a monolithic embodiment of the principle that the desert always reclaims its own, turning the acquisitive flesh of man into the patient, silent stone of the earth. Our second destination takes us to the stark, blinding expanse of the Qatar Depression in Egypt, a place where the earth sinks below the level of the sea, creating vast, treacherous salt flats. Here, amidst the shimmering mirages and the crystalline crust of salt, we listen for the whispering djinn of the salt flats, a legend known locally as the Al-Huzn, the mother of sorrow. This entity is not a creature of physical violence, but of profound psychological warfare. It is an atmospheric haunting, a spirit of pure, distilled grief that infects the minds of those who wander into its domain. Its purpose is not to kill the body, but to erode the soul, to trap the living in an endless, echoing labyrinth of their own regrets and sorrows until they welcome the oblivion of the salt-encrusted earth. The Al-Huzn has no physical form, no monstrous visage to confront. It is a presence felt in the sudden, inexplicable drop in temperature under the midday sun, a pressure in the air that makes breathing feel like an act of profound effort. Its primary manifestation is auditory. It is the sound of a woman weeping, a sound that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, carried on the dry wind. This is not a sound of simple sadness. It is a keening of absolute, world-ending despair that bypasses the ears and resonates directly in the bones. It is said that to hear the whispers of the jinn is to have every sorrow you have ever experienced, every loss you have ever mourned, brought to the forefront of your consciousness, amplified 1,000-fold. The whispers are not always weeping. Sometimes they are insidious, murmuring the names of lost loved ones, replaying final, bitter arguments, or articulating a traveler's deepest insecurities and fears with chilling accuracy. The jinn's powers are entirely psychic and environmental. It can manipulate the landscape of the salt flats, creating disorienting mirages that show not oases, but heartbreaking visions from a traveler's past. A childhood home now in ruins, the face of a betrayed lover, a funeral procession. It preys on the mind's vulnerability in the disorienting, featureless landscape, turning the traveler's own memory into a weapon against them. Its influence is a creeping madness, a progressive detachment from reality. Victims first become withdrawn and melancholic, then paranoid and prone to fits of weeping, and finally, they simply lie down upon the salt, surrendering to a despair so total that the will to live is extinguished. Their bodies are found days or weeks later, perfectly preserved by the salt, with expressions of tranquil, heartbreaking sorrow on their faces. The origin of the al-Huzn is a tragedy that has become a topographical curse. The legend speaks of Zainab, the queen of a small but prosperous kingdom that once existed on the edge of the Depression. She was a ruler beloved for her wisdom and compassion. Her husband, the king, grew jealous of the people's love for her and, driven by the poisonous advice of a rival vizier, accused her of treason and witchcraft. In a cruel spectacle, he had her exiled into the heart of the salt flats with no food or water, proclaiming that if she was truly favored by the gods, they would save her. She wandered for days, her heart broken not by her husband's cruelty, but by the betrayal of the people she had loved, who stood by and did nothing. In her final moments, consumed by thirst and a grief that transcended personal pain and became a sorrow for the faithlessness of the world, she did not pray for vengeance. She uttered a curse of empathy, a prayer that this place would forever hold the memory of her sorrow, so that any who entered it would understand the true weight of a broken heart. When she died, her body did not decay. It dissolved into the salt and the air, her final, despairing breath becoming the first whisper of the al-Huzn. In the early 1920s, a French cartographer and rationalist named Jean-Pierre Du Bois was tasked with surveying the Qatar Depression for a proposed hydroelectric project. He was a man of science, a staunch empiricist who viewed the world as a series of solvable equations. He dismissed the local warnings about the al-Huzn as primitive superstition. Accompanied by a small team of surveyors and a local guide, he ventured into the flats. For the first few days, the work proceeded as planned. Then, the whispers began. At first, Du Bois dismissed it as the wind, but the sound, a faint, mournful cry, grew more distinct. His guide, recognizing the sound, abandoned the expedition in terror. Du Bois scoffed, but soon his men began to show signs of distress. They became listless, morose, speaking of sad dreams and hearing the voices of their dead relatives. Du Bois, though unsettled, pushed them onward. The jinn then turned its attention to him. He began to hear the voice of his younger brother, who had died in the trenches of the Great War. The whispers replayed their last conversation, a bitter argument over a woman. The mirages began to show him not water, but the muddy, shell-pocked fields of Verdun. His scientific certainty began to fracture, replaced by consuming guilt and sorrow. He sent his men back, claiming he needed to take final measurements, but his journal reveals the truth. He could not bear for them to see him unravel. His last entry, written in a shaky, erratic hand, reads, "The salt is in my throat. I hear you, Louis. I'm so sorry. The sound is beautiful. It is the only truth. The sorrow is the only truth." His perfectly preserved body was discovered months later by a British patrol. He was lying on his back, arms crossed over his chest, with a single, crystalline tear frozen on his cheek. The legend of the al-Huzn is a profound psychological exploration of grief and memory. The jinn itself is a personification of complex post-traumatic stress, a spirit that embodies the idea that some sorrows are so vast they cannot be contained within a single person, but must instead saturate the very environment. The salt flats are a perfect metaphorical landscape for this entity, a sterile, dead place where nothing grows, reflecting the barrenness of absolute despair. The preservation of its victims by the salt is also deeply symbolic. They are not destroyed, but frozen in their final moment of sorrow, becoming permanent statues in the jinn's Museum of Grief. Du Bois's story is a critique of pure rationalism. His scientific worldview offered him no defense against an attack that targeted not his body, but his emotional and historical self. The legend posits that there are forces, particularly those of human emotion, that cannot be measured, quantified, or dismissed. It is a haunting assertion that the deepest wounds are not physical, and the most dangerous ghosts are the ones we carry inside ourselves. Today, the Qatar Depression remains largely uninhabited and undeveloped, the hydroelectric project that Du Bois surveyed never coming to fruition. Locals still speak of the Mother of Sorrow, and travelers are warned away from the heart of the flats. The legend has found a new resonance in the language of modern psychology, interpreted as a powerful allegory for clinical depression and the disorienting nature of unresolved grief. The Alhazan serves as a somber reminder that the emotional history of a place can be as powerful and as dangerous as its physical geography, a spectral presence that asks a chilling question. Can a person be haunted not by a ghost, but by an emotion itself? The enduring whisper of the Alhazan is the whisper of a truth we often seek to deny, that some sorrows do not fade with time, but instead crystallize, becoming a permanent and formidable part of the world's psychic landscape. For our third tale, we descend from the sun-blasted surface into the suffocating darkness beneath the Theban necropolis, near the ancient city of Ptolemy Hermia. Here, in the labyrinthine tombs and forgotten catacombs, we encounter the sunken scribes. These are not vengeful spirits or monstrous guardians, but something far more insidious. They're the spectral bureaucrats of the underworld, the eternal auditors of human sin. Their legend is a chilling meditation on judgment, the inescapable nature of one's deeds, and the terrifying idea that history is not a dispassionate record, but an active, moral indictment. Their purpose is not to punish, but simply to record. And in their world, to be recorded is to be damned. The scribes appear as gaunt, desiccated figures, resembling mummies that have been stripped of their wrappings. Their skin is like dry parchment, stretched taut over brittle bones, and their eye sockets are empty, hollow voids that seem to absorb the light. They are perpetually hunched over unseen desks, their skeletal fingers clutching phantom styluses, scratching away at scrolls that shimmer with a faint, ethereal luminescence. They are utterly silent, save for the dry, rustling, scratching sound of their eternal work, a sound like dead leaves skittering across a tomb floor, a sound that is said to be the literal transcription of a sinner's soul. They are clad in the tattered remnants of priestly robes, and a fine, gray dust, the dust of ages and forgotten sins, constantly falls from their bodies. The supernatural power of the sunken scribes lies in their medium and their method. The scrolls they write upon are said to be crafted from the flayed skin of the prideful, and their ink is mixed from the condensed tears of the unrepentant. Their most terrifying ability is their inescapable perception. They do not need to see a person to know their transgressions. They simply know. Any mortal who enters their domain has their entire life, every selfish act, every cruel word, every secret, malicious thought, laid bare before the scribes. As they write, the sinner is forced to witness these events, not as memories, but as vivid, torturous reenactments played out in the spectral light of the chamber. The scribes possess no physical strength and offer no physical threat. Their power is the power of absolute truth and perfect record, a judgment from which there is no appeal and no escape. To be in their presence is to be flayed psychologically, to have one's self-perception stripped away until only the stark, ugly truth of one soul remains. The origin of the sunken scribes is rooted in a perversion of sacred duty. In the age of the Ptolemies, there existed a secretive order of priests dedicated to Thoth, the god of wisdom and judgment. This order was tasked with maintaining the Book of Souls, a mythical record of every human life. Under the leadership of a high priest named Imhotep the Younger, a man obsessed with moral purity to the point of fanaticism, the order's purpose became corrupted. He believed that merely recording deeds was insufficient. True justice required an eternal accounting. He and his acolytes developed a ritual, using forbidden magic, to bind their souls to their work, intending to become immortal judges. But their hubris was their undoing. The ritual succeeded, but not as they intended. A great earthquake, said to be the angry retort of the gods themselves, struck Thebes, and the temple of the scribes was swallowed by the earth, plunging them into the deep darkness. They were granted immortality, but it was a curse, not a blessing. They were bound to their task for eternity, cut off from the light of the sun and the grace of the gods, transformed from sacred keepers of knowledge into monstrous archivists of damnation. Their library, now a sunken tomb. During the Napoleonic expedition to Egypt in 1799, a French savant named Antoine de Valois, a man driven by intellectual vanity and a rapacious desire for forgotten knowledge, became fixated on rumors of a subterranean library near Ptolemy. He believed it to be a hidden cache of texts from the Library of Alexandria. Ignoring the warnings of his Egyptian counterparts, he organized a small party to explore a newly discovered network of catacombs. After days of navigating the treacherous, lightless passages, they broke through a wall into a vast, cavernous chamber. There, in the dim glow of their torches, they saw them, dozens, perhaps hundreds of desiccated figures, silently scratching at glowing scrolls. De Valois, believing he had found a trove of unimaginable historical value, approached one of the figures. As he drew near, the scratching stopped. The scribe, without lifting its head, began to write a new scroll. At that moment, de Valois was struck by a vision. He saw himself as a boy, stealing a valuable book from his tutor. He saw himself plagiarizing a colleague's work to win an academic prize. He saw his cruel dismissal of a devoted lover, his betrayal of a trusted friend. Every selfish, prideful, and deceitful act of his life unfolded before him, not as a memory, but as a fresh, searing experience. The shame and self-loathing were unbearable. His companions, who saw only a man screaming in a dark room, tried to pull him away, but he was paralyzed. The scribe finished its work, and the scroll it had been writing turned to dust. In that instant, de Valois' body collapsed, his flesh rapidly desiccating until he was little more than a pile of bones and dry skin, his face frozen in a mask of horrified self-recognition. His terrified companions fled, sealing the entrance behind them. Their frantic, unbelievable tale is the only record of the event. The sunken scribes are a powerful allegory for the immutable and objective nature of the past. In a world where history is often rewritten by the victors, the scribes represent a force that cannot be deceived or persuaded. They are the embodiment of the conscience, the ultimate, incorruptible record keepers. Their legend speaks to a deep-seated fear not of punishment, but of exposure, the dread that one day we will be forced to confront the unvarnished truth of who we are as defined by our actions. Their subterranean library is a metaphor for the subconscious, the deep, dark place where we bury our own transgressions. The scribe's power is the terrifying idea that nothing is ever truly forgotten, that every action leaves an indelible mark on the cosmic record. De Valois' downfall is a cautionary tale against the pursuit of knowledge without wisdom or morality. His intellectual pride led him to believe he could claim and possess any secret, but he was unprepared for the ultimate secret, the truth about himself. In the contemporary world, the legend of the sunken scribes resonates with anxieties about the digital age. In an era of permanent online records, surveillance, and the indelible nature of our digital footprint, the idea of an eternal, inescapable record of our actions feels more plausible than ever. The scribes have become a kind of supernatural allegory for the internet's long memory, a Gothic personification of the fear that a single mistake, a cruel word, or a foolish act can be recorded and judged forever. They remind us that the archives of history and of our own lives are always being written, and that the most terrifying judgment is not one of fire and brimstone, but of simple, perfect, and eternal recollection. Thus, the silent, scratching quills of the sunken scribes serve as a profound and disturbing memento mori, whispering from below the earth that our deeds are our only true legacy, and that the final historian is both omniscient and unforgiving. Fourth on our grim itinerary is the blighted city of Akhenaten, the ephemeral capital built by the heretic pharaoh Akhenaten. From the ruins of this grand, failed experiment in monotheism, a legend arose that is as much a historical allegory as it is a supernatural horror, the Gilded Scourge. This is not an entity in the traditional sense, but a sentient plague, a curse born from the collision of absolute power, religious fanaticism, and the offended majesty of a pantheon of old gods. The scourge is the personification of hubris made manifest, a creeping, beautiful pestilence that offers a terrifying form of apotheosis, turning human flesh into inert, worthless gold before consigning it to dust. Its purpose is cosmic retribution, to demonstrate the folly of one man attempting to remake heaven in his own image. The gilded scourge manifests as a golden, shimmering dust, fine as pollen, that drifts on the desert winds that blow through the ruins of Amarna. It glitters beautifully in the sunlight, an alluring, deadly miasma. When it settles on a living being, it does not burn or corrode. Instead, it initiates a slow, inexorable transmutation. The skin first takes on a golden sheen, then hardens, the flesh beneath becoming heavy and metallic. Veins turn to filigrees of gold, and eyes become solid orbs of amber. In the final stages, the victim is transformed into a perfect, lifelike golden statue, a monument to their own demise. But this is not the end. The Midas-like transformation is temporary. After a period of a few hours to a day, a second change begins. The golden statue cracks, flakes, and disintegrates into a pile of dull, worthless dust and sand, leaving nothing behind. The scourge's powers are insidious and absolute within its domain. It is intelligent, seemingly able to target those with the most pride or those who mock the old ways. It can lie dormant for centuries, only to be awakened by arrogance or sacrilege. Its primary weapon is allure. The initial stages of the transformation are said to be painless, even euphoric, filling the victim with a sense of divine importance. This makes the final, horrifying dissolution all the more psychologically devastating. The scourge is also a contagion of ideas. Those who spend too long in the ruins of Akhenaten, even if they escape the dust, are said to become obsessed, monomaniacal, and consumed by a single, unwavering belief, mirroring the fanaticism of the pharaoh who inadvertently created the curse. The origin of the gilded scourge is inextricably linked to Akhenaten's great heresy. When the pharaoh abandoned the traditional pantheon of Egyptian gods in favor of the worship of a single deity, the sun disk Aten, he ordered the temples of the old gods to be closed, their names chiseled from monuments, and their priests persecuted. According to the legend, a cabal of the most powerful priests of Ammon-Ra, Osiris, and Isis gathered in a secret ceremony. They could not openly defy the pharaoh, so they enacted a great curse. They did not call upon a demon or a monster, but instead invoked the fundamental principles of cosmic balance that Akhenaten had so arrogantly discarded. They prayed that the pharaoh's singular obsession, his golden Aten, would become a literal and destructive force, that his desire to transform the world would be turned back upon the bodies of his followers, showing them the sterile, lifeless end of his single-minded vision. The curse was not immediate. It lay dormant, weaving itself into the very foundations of the new city, waiting. When Akhenaten's reign collapsed and his city was abandoned, the curse festered, becoming one with the dust and the wind, a permanent, golden antibody against ideological purity. In 1912, a German archaeological team, led by the ambitious and prideful Professor Ludwig Borchardt, was excavating at Amarna. It was this team that would famously discover the bust of Nefertiti. But before that discovery, a strange sickness fell over their camp. Several local workmen began to complain of a heaviness in their limbs and a strange, metallic taste in their mouths. Borchardt, a man of rigid discipline and little sympathy, dismissed it as malingering. Then, one of the junior German archaeologists, a young man named Klaus, began to exhibit the same symptoms. His colleagues noted with morbid fascination that his skin was taking on a beautiful, golden luster. Klaus himself seemed ecstatic, writing in his diary that he felt he was becoming one with the sun god, Borchardt, fearing a scandal that could jeopardize his expedition, quarantined the young man. One morning, a terrified cry came from the quarantine tent. Borchardt entered to find not Klaus, but a stunningly lifelike statue of the young man, made of solid gold. As he stared in disbelief, a crack appeared on the statue's face. Before his eyes, the entire form crumbled into a heap of fine, glittering dust and sand. In the following days, the same fate befell the afflicted workman. Borchardt, terrified but ruthlessly pragmatic, documented the phenomenon with cold, scientific detachment in a secret journal. Referring to it as the immortal, he abandoned the afflicted sections of the dig site, redoubled his efforts elsewhere, and never spoke of the incident again, his public silence as cold and complete as the golden statues he had seen crumble. The Gilded Scourge is a potent metaphor for the dangers of ideological extremism and the pursuit of utopian purity. Akhenaten's project was an attempt to create a perfect, rationalized religion, but in wiping out the messy, complex pantheon of old gods, he also wiped out the complexity of human experience they represented. The scourge is the literal manifestation of this sterile endpoint. Gold, normally a symbol of wealth, divinity, and permanence, is here transformed into a symbol of death, sterility, and impermanence. The transformation is beautiful, but it is lifeless. It is a perfect static form that cannot endure. The legend is a critique of any ideology, religious or political, that seeks to remake humanity into a single, pure image. It warns that such projects, however well-intentioned, inevitably end in a form of death, turning living, breathing, flawed individuals into beautiful but empty icons that ultimately crumble to dust. Borchardt's reaction, cold secrecy, and the prioritization of his ambition over the horrifying events he witnessed, is a secondary commentary on how the pursuit of greatness can morally hollow out an individual, making him complicit in the very phenomena he studies. The relevance of the Gilded Scourge in the modern world is stark and chilling. In an age marked by resurgent fundamentalism, political polarization, and the seductive certainty of echo chambers, the legend of a plague born for fanaticism feels frighteningly contemporary. The golden dust can be seen as a metaphor for the spread of viral, extremist ideologies, which promise a kind of transcendent purity but deliver only sterile division and eventual collapse. The story of Akhenaten and its curse is a historical and mythical anchor for our current anxieties about the destructive potential of absolute belief. It warns that the desire to create a golden age by force, to chisel away all that is deemed impure or traditional, often leads not to a shining new world, but to a wasteland of glittering dust. Therefore, the Gilded Scourge of Akhenaten remains a shimmering, deadly warning blowing through the ruins of history, a testament to the fact that fanaticism's greatest creation is its own beautiful, hollow, and transient destruction. For our final and fifth legend, we venture into the most desolate and psychologically treacherous terrain of all, the shifting seas of sand in the heart of the great sand sea of Egypt and Libya. Here, where landmarks are illusions and the horizon is a perpetually receding promise, we find the weaver of the Oasian mirage, an entity known in the sparse folklore of the Sivan nomads as the Gul-al-Sarab, the demon of the false image. This being represents the desert's most cruel and subtle weapon, hope. It is a predator that baits its trap not with threats, but with promises, crafting perfect illusions of salvation to lure the desperate and the lost to their doom. Its existence is a terrifying philosophical statement on the nature of reality and the deadly power of desire. The Gul-al-Sarab is never seen directly. Like a puppeteer, it is known only through its creations. It weaves mirages, but these are not the simple, shimmering heat distortions of natural physics. They are fully immersive, multi-sensory hallucinations of breathtaking fidelity. A traveler dying of thirst will not just see a distant pool of water. They will see a lush, verdant oasis, hear the rustle of palm fronds and the laughter of children, smell the scent of jasmine and cooking fires, and feel a cool, moist breeze on their sun-cracked skin. The illusion is always tailored to the victim's deepest desires. A lost caravan might see its destination city just over the next dune. A lonely wanderer might see the welcoming embrace of their long-dead family. The illusion is always perfect, always just out of reach, pulling the victim deeper and deeper into the waterless heart of the desert. The creature's power is one of immense psychic projection and environmental manipulation. It does not merely create an image. It projects a pocket of altered reality. For the duration of the encounter, the oasis is real to the victim in every conceivable way. The only weakness of the illusion is that it cannot be physically touched. Should a traveler manage to reach their goal and attempt to drink the water or embrace a loved one, the entire mirage shatters instantly, like a pane of glass, revealing the stark, sun-bleached reality of the empty desert. This sudden, brutal whiplash from ultimate hope to absolute despair is the creature's true nourishment. It is said to feed not on flesh or blood, but on the psychic energy released in the moment a soul breaks, the potent vintage of shattered hope. The origins of the Gul al-Sarab are shrouded in the deepest mists of prehistory. Some legends claim it is a primordial spirit of deception, as old as the sand itself, a natural predator of the desert's ecosystem that evolved to hunt the most complex prey, the sentient mind. A more specific tale, however, speaks of a powerful sorcerer king who ruled a magnificent city where the great sand sea now lies. He was a master of illusions, able to craft fantastical realities for the amusement of his court. When a rival empire threatened him with an unstoppable army, he did not raise his own forces. Instead, in an act of supreme arrogance, he cast a grand illusion, making his entire kingdom vanish, intending to reappear once the enemy had passed. But the spell was too powerful, too perfect. He succeeded in detaching his kingdom from reality, but he could not find his way back. The city and its people were trapped forever in a non-existent space, a phantom realm. The king, driven mad by his failure and his eternal isolation, became a being of pure illusion and spite. His only connection to the real world, his ability to project false images. His only pleasure, the act of inflicting upon others the same soul-crushing disappointment that is his eternal fate. In the late 1930s, during the Western Desert Campaign of World War II, a long-range desert group patrol, consisting of 3 British soldiers, went missing. They had been tasked with a reconnaissance mission deep in territory where maps were useless. Weeks later, a single, half-mad survivor, a Corporal Evans, was found by a Bedouin tribe. He was severely dehydrated and suffering from extreme sun exposure, but his psychological trauma was far worse. In his official debriefing, he told a story the military authorities dismissed as heat-induced delirium. He recounted how their vehicle had broken down and their water had run out. After 2 days of walking, resigned to their fate, they saw it, a perfect English village nestled in a green valley between 2 towering dunes. They could see a pub with a thatched roof, a church spire, and smoke curling from chimneys. Evans swore he could hear the sound of a cricket match and smell his mother's Sunday roast. His 2 companions, crying with joy and relief, ran towards it. Evans, a more cynical man, hesitated. The vision seemed too perfect, too specific to his own longings. He called out to his friends, but they were lost in the dream. He watched them run, getting closer and closer, and then, just as they reached the edge of the village green, they vanished. Not in a shimmer, but instantly, as if they had simply ceased to exist. The village, the valley, the sounds, the smells, all of it disappeared in the blink of an eye, leaving only Evans, alone in the vast, silent emptiness, the shock of the event burning itself into his mind more deeply than the sun had burned his skin. The Gul al-Sarab is a devastatingly effective metaphor for the seductive and dangerous nature of false hope and denial. It represents the internal mirages we project onto the world to avoid confronting a harsh reality. The entity's method of feeding on shattered hope is a profound psychological concept. It suggests that the most painful experience is not the long struggle against adversity, but the sudden, catastrophic collapse of a deeply held belief that salvation is at hand. Corporal Evans's story situates this ancient legend in a modern context, demonstrating that even the machinery and cynicism of 20th century warfare are no match for the desert's primordial power to prey on the fundamental human need for comfort and home. His survival, attributed to his cynicism, is a dark commentary. In the desert of the Gul al-Sarab, it is only the hopeless who are safe. In our contemporary world, saturated with digital illusions, curated realities, and the promise of quick fixes and perfect lives, the weaver of the Oasian mirage feels like a particularly relevant demon. It is the personification of the social media feed that presents a flawless life, the get-rich-quick scheme that promises effortless wealth, the political ideology that offers a simple solution to complex problems. It is the demon of the if only. The legend warns us of the profound danger of chasing our desires so blindly that we lose our grip on the real, of pursuing an oasis so beautiful that we fail to notice we are drinking only sand. It teaches the desert's harshest lesson, that sometimes the most merciful thing is not a beautiful lie, but the brutal, honest, and survivable truth. And so, the Gul al-Sarab waits, a silent, patient weaver in the empty quarter of the soul, ready to craft the perfect paradise for the next lost traveler, knowing that the most exquisite despair is always born from the most beautiful hope. Our journey through the shadowed deserts and golden curses now draws to its close. We have stood before the monolithic wrath of the Amalith of Ibisal, listened to the soul-eroding whispers of the Al-Huzn, witnessed the inexorable judgment of the sunken scribes of Ptolemy, fled the beautiful decay of the gilded scourge, and narrowly escaped the false promise of the weaver of the Oasian mirage. What wisdom, then, have we gleaned from these ancient and terrifying chronicles? We have seen that the desert, in its vast and terrible beauty, is a moral landscape. It is a place that does not suffer fools, nor does it forgive the sins of greed, hubris, fanaticism, or even excessive sorrow. Each legend, in its own unique and horrifying way, has shown us a mirror. In the Amalith, we see our rapacious desire for resources met with nature's stony, assimilating fury. In the Whispering Jinn, we confront the idea that our own unresolved grief can become a malevolent, haunting force. The sunken scribes remind us that there is an ultimate accounting for our actions, while the gilded scourge warns of the lifeless sterility at the end of any quest for ideological purity. And in the weaver's mirage, we are cautioned against the fatal allure of our own most cherished hopes when they are untethered from reality. These stories, then, are not merely about monsters. They are a complex and sophisticated cartography of the human soul, mapped onto the unforgiving terrain of the desert. They reveal a profound, ancient understanding that our internal landscapes and the external world are deeply intertwined. Our flaws, our greed, our sorrow, our pride do not exist in a vacuum. In these legends, they take root in the soil, they poison the air, and they birth entities that are nothing more and nothing less than the literal embodiment of our own worst natures. The desert does not create these monsters. It merely gives form to the ones we bring with us. The act of watching, of listening to these tales, is not a passive one. By engaging with this lore, you become part of a tradition that stretches back thousands of years. You become keepers of these stories, guardians of the cautionary wisdom they contain. For that, you have my gratitude. If this exploration of the darkness has illuminated something within you, I ask that you subscribe to our channel, share these stories with those who would appreciate them, and leave a comment below to continue our discourse. Your engagement is the lifeblood of this intellectual and spiritual pursuit. The archives of human fear are vast and deep, and there are countless other landscapes, both real and imagined, whose dark folklore awaits our scholarly inquiry. The legends are not dead. They are evolving, and I shall remain your faithful guide through their future permutations. May your nights be free from the whisper of the salt flats. and may the only scribes you encounter be those of benign history. Remember, the greatest legends do not tell us that dragons exist. They tell us that dragons can be beaten. But the oldest legends, the ones from the deep desert, whisper a more unsettling truth: that the most fearsome monsters are always the ones that show us something true about ourselves. Until our next journey into the shadows, remain curious, remain cautious, and look for the truth that is always encoded in the darkness. The desert remembers. And now, so do you.